Hey everyone, how you doing? So, who's up for talking about something that was mentioned like a single time in the 987 chapters of One Piece that we basically know nothing about? I know I am! How about you, Barry? Shut up. Okay, so today we will be talking about the Ice Continent, or the Ice Country, or the Winterlands. Woo, spooky cold. You know, whatever you want to call it, it's the One Piece equivalent to Antarctica. A place that is a frozen land as far as the eye could see. Where is it at? I don't know, but it's been mentioned before. It at least exists. We know that much, and it's been mentioned more than once. It's a few times throughout the story. It's either been directly mentioned or, like, something else has been stated so we can kind of infer its existence, okay? So we definitely know somewhere in the One Piece world this place exists, and it fascinates me. It fascinates me that there's like an Antarctica, like frozen wasteland somewhere in the One Piece world because I love geography. This is my new compass necklace. See, it's a necklace that's a compass. But yeah, I don't think the Straw Hats are ever going to go there. I mean, I guess conceivably they might if it's in the New World, but I don't think it's in the New World because the first thing we need to talk about here is the exact, like, way the globe is supposed to be positioned, alright? Before we even get into the ice continent itself. Most of the time, and this even happens a lot in the anime, whenever we see the globe of the One Piece world like this, it's always positioned where the red line is like on the prime meridian and the grand line is on the equator. Now, I mean, when it comes to like space, if it comes to like a spaceship traveling to our planet, the concept of up and down doesn't really exist in space, right? So, for example, you know, this is the way we view our planet. You know, here's the North Pole up here, and here's the South Pole down here, Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere. But if you're traveling through space, you know, if you're an alien visiting Earth and you arrive and it could be easily like this, you know what I mean? They might think this is the North and this is the South, you know, or it could be positioned in this other weird way, because there's no up and down in space, right? But the way that Oda has depicted the planet with the four blues, north, south, east, and west, positioning the planet like this doesn't make a lot of sense. And that always actually confused me when I was a kid, because even back in the Four Kids days, I remember watching the episode in Logtown when Sanji was in that cooking contest. Do you remember the song? The song? I'm not going to sing the song, don't worry. You gotta cook it tonight, you gotta hold that spatula proudly, you gotta cook it up. Okay, so that episode, right? Sanji's cooking in the contest, and he remembers, like, the legend of the All Blue, okay? And we actually see a map in the early days of One Piece where we see the north, south, east, and west blues, okay? And they draw them like this, and the planet's like this. But the thing that always confused me is, like, but the north and the east blue are both in the north, and the west and the south blue are both in the south, so how does that make sense? How is the south blue more south than the west blue in this context? They look like they're the same latitude, right? Right? Exactly. So, I guess you could say, like, the northern and southern hemisphere, that's where they get their names, but no. This is the way I think Oda, you know, is aiming on the planet to be depicted, you know, with the red line and the equator kind of going diagonal across the planet, and then there you go. Now we have the four blues positioned where their names actually make sense. The north blue at the top and the south blue at the bottom, and then east and west on the left and right respectively, okay? So that makes more sense. But, you know, I even made that video like 3 years ago. That's one of the first big One Piece videos I did where I talked about the planet of One Piece, and I even made that mistake. A lot of people make that mistake. The anime makes that mistake, okay? So, you know, you could see where it comes from there. But yeah, the One Piece planet is supposed to be tilted a little bit. You know, kind of like how our planet is kind of on an axis, okay? So, yeah, the red line doesn't go straight down the middle. I mean, it does in a certain context, but it's not supposed to be, okay? At least the way it was named, not supposed to be like that in Oda's head, right? So, with that being said, this frozen Arctic continent would either be in the north of the North Blue or the south of the South Blue, which would put it way outside the Grand Line, which is probably the reason why the Straw Hats would never visit it, because they're in the New World right now. I mean, the New World does border the North Blue and the West Blue, so I guess conceivably the Straw Hats could leave the Grand Line and go into the north of the North Blue, and they could find it up there, the North Pole. Maybe Santa's in One Piece. You ever think of that? Maybe Santa is Im-sama. Maybe that's gonna be the big surprise, okay? Santa's like, he's a corrupted evil Santa. Ooh, that would be a good D&D campaign. I gotta write that down. Okay, you and the rest of your party have to fight Santa, but he's like lich or something, and he can cast all these cold spells. Okay, I'm gonna do that as like a freaking Christmas D&D campaign or something. Okay, so no, that's the way it's positioned right now. The first time this was mentioned in any serious way, I mean, it was mentioned before as kind of like comedy. Like, even if you go all the way back to like early One Piece, you know, when Buggy and Shanks were arguing, what were they arguing about that one time in that one episode? Which is colder, the North or the South Pole? Not the North or the South Blue. They were talking about, like, which is colder, the North Pole. No, it's the South Pole, idiot. And Rayleigh had to, like, smack him, like, would you two quit arguing? Damn it, who cares? By the way, just in case you're curious, the South Pole, see, even I'm doing it. The South Pole is colder. It is objectively colder. At least in our world it is, okay? So that at least proves right there that, like, the Arctic exists in the One Piece world, right? So that was kind of like a comedy moment, though. The one time it was mentioned in the story that actually was, like, integral to the plot was during Thriller Bark, when Oars, at least Oars' zombie, he was stomping around, and the Straw Hats were all fighting him, and Chopper hypothesized that, wait a second, well, Oars is this giant, you know, ancient giant. You know, what could have even killed him when he was alive? Like, maybe that's a clue to how we could end him, right? And so Chopper hypothesizes, like, well, a lot of his flesh is kind of coming off, sort of like frostbites, and, you know, Hogback had to stitch him back together, and Oars is wearing nothing but just like a loincloth. So Chopper came to the conclusion of, like, wait a second, what probably happened was Oars died of exposure. So 500 years ago, Oars had his war band of, like, other ancient giants terrorizing the planet as the continent pullers. They might have had something in, you know, making Wano, or, like, their ancestors might have had something in shaping the land of Wano. But at some point, Oars and his warband, I guess, traveled to this ice continent, and they were very unprepared because they're giants, and they probably thought, they're like, oh, we are mighty ancient giants men. We don't actually know how Oars would have spoke, because Oars in the story only had Luffy's shadow, so that's how Oars spoke like Luffy, but we don't know how Oars might have spoken. I don't know. He might have been a very gentlemanly ancient giant. Who would have guessed? He'd be, like, sailing in a giant Viking-style longboat. He's like, men, we travel today to the lost ancient ice continent. There we will hopefully find many villages to pillage. I am glad that all of you joined my ancient giant warband. Hear, 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 Oars, hear, hear. You know, he might have been a gentlemanly giant, who knows? But no, they went to the ice continent, they stepped out of their boat, they started stomping around the place, and they died of exposure. So that's how they lost their lives. So yeah, that's how they died. Now, Moria and Hogback at some point had acquired Oars' corpse, because that's the whole point of the arc, you know, getting Oars' corpse, sticking it in a freezer. Hogback worked on it a little bit, you know, specified Special Zombie 900, and then Luffy's shadow was the first shadow they thought would actually be powerful enough to contain inside of Oars' body, and that's what they did, right? So does that mean Moria and Hogback went to the ice continent to retrieve it? Well, maybe, but not necessarily, because if this really is an ice continent that's similar to, like, Antarctica, it's very possible that Oars might have been frozen in, like, an iceberg, and then the ice might have cracked off and then floated off into the ocean, and then Moria or Hogback or somebody might have realized, they might have seen the, you know, the iceberg later on, and when it's far from the ice continent, then they might have retrieved it and then chucked it in the freezer, right? Also, Oars had an entire group of, like, ancient giants, you know, in his warband, right? So it doesn't make much sense that they would only find Oars, because you'd think they would have all died in relatively the same area. If they all landed on the ice continent at the same time, and they were all dressed the same, and they all died of exposure at roughly the same time, you think Moria and Hogback would have found more than one. So I'm thinking it was maybe something like that. I don't think Moria and Hogback directly went there, right? Now, there's other times in the story that this place is kind of referenced, or at least its existence is inferred. For example, during Marineford, we get introduced to Whitey Bay, who is an ally of Whitebeard's crew, actually used to be a member of Whitebeard's crew, as we found out in the Odin flashback, and she's known as the Ice Witch, and a big part of her, you know, involvement in Marineford was she actually had an icebreaker ship, an icebreaker vessel, a ship that's all decked out with, like, steel plates and stuff that just shatter right through the ice. And because you had Aokiji there that was freezing the entire bay, the bay fought against the Bay. The one Bay destroyed the Ice Bay, you know? She's Bay. Okay, so, you know, the existence of that ship and her moniker of the Ice Witch, and, you know, she's all decked out and she's got the blue and she's got a snowflake on her, Captain Bicorn and everything like that. You'd look at, you know, you look at Whitey Bay and you'd be like, yeah, she probably has been to the Ice Continent before. Most likely. Because you'd figure, like, there are places in One Piece, like Drum Island, like half of Punk Hazard. There's winter islands in the Grand Line. There's islands that are already frozen. There's that area during the Ice Hunter arc, for instance. That was a filler, but there's frozen winter islands in the Grand Line. So you could say, oh, maybe she just went to one of those. But no, like, Whitey Bay's whole thing is, like, she's decked out with, like, snow aesthetic, and her ship is an icebreaker ship. So whatever she does on her, like, when she normally works as a pirate, because remember, she came to Marineford as a favor to Whitebeard, okay? That's not normally what she does. Whatever she does normally, she's staying around an area that's extremely cold and extremely frozen over, all right? Maybe it just means that her home island, where she has a home base of operations, might be a frozen island like Karakuri Island. It might be a place like that where in order to get in and out of her hideout, she has to use an icebreaker vessel. Or it could be that she makes frequent trips to the Arctic, because maybe she's like, oh, you know, the Arctic is a vast unexplored land, and I'm a pirate, and that's gonna be my thing. You know, Roger wanted to find the end of the Grand Line. You know, other pirates want to just rule and, you know, have, like, various islands under their control. Other people just want to adventure and discover things, and my thing as a pirate is I'm going to explore the Arctic. I'm going to explore the winterlands. I'm going to find out all the secrets that they contain, which, you know what? You know, you'd think of it as just like, oh, it's just going to be a frozen, boring wasteland of just, it's just going to be an Arctic desert. But in the One Piece world, there could actually be some really interesting shit in the Arctic. You know what I mean? Like, ores was one thing, an ancient giant. Think of all the other, maybe extinct species or races that have existed in the One Piece world, right? Like dragons. Dragons were a thing that actually existed at one point. Ryuma cut one in half. And Vegapunk is trying to bioengineer new dragons because of the celestial dragons, like, probably have this obsession with them. I like to think back in the day during the Void Century, dragons were way more commonplace. Celestial dragons would actually ride around on them, and whenever dragons would, like, they would, like, the celestial dragons wanted to own an island, their dragons, like these huge things the size of a damn skyscraper, would land on the island and boom, imprint their claw prints on the island. And so that's where the symbol of the hoof of the celestial dragons comes from. Anything branded with this symbol is celestial dragon property. Well, we haven't seen, like, normal dragons around in a while. I mean, we saw the bioengineered ones at Punk Hazard. We saw Kaido, but he's a duck dragon. That doesn't really count. We don't know what the deal with Kaido is. If he's a natural dragon or if he has a mythical dragon fruit, we don't know what's up with Kaido being a dragon. But we haven't seen just, like, normal wild dragons, just like, there's a salamence, there's a dragonite just flying around, right? Well, there could be something similar to what happened with ores, the Arctic wasteland, and then buried under the ice for not even hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. There are giant dragons just frozen in the ice under there. And, you know, Bay's crew might find it at some point, be like, whoa, we found a dragon. Whoa, we found an ancient civilization. Whoa, we found a mountain of treasure. At this point, I should also bring up the Jewel Ice Shelf. This is something else that I don't think is part of the Arctic, but it might be. This whole thing is very confusing. Not so much confusing as it's just ambiguous. But remember during Dressrosa, when we found out the history of Don Chinjiao, and Don Chinjiao talked about how, you know, like, back in my day, we had this epic ice shelf, and we stored all of the great treasure of the Kano Kingdom, of the Hoppo Navy underneath it, and the only way to access it was with my mighty dragon drill head. And then Garp showed up and that's where he got, hey, he didn't get the title of the Fist for nothing, right? And he smashed down Xinjiao's head like a damn accordion, and he could no longer open up the ice shelf. We don't know where that ice shelf was, though. It might have been in the New World. It might have been in Paradise. Don Chinjiao is from the West Blue. That's where the Kano Kingdom is. So the West Blue, if we tilt the Earth like this, it wouldn't be anywhere where it's, cold. But then again, keep in mind, even the East Blue has places that are really cold, because the East Blue has Tequila Wolf. And, oh, I said tequila right. I'm learning. But yeah, no, it might be a place in the north of the East Blue, and there's an island there, because the East and the other blues are not, like, the same kind of weather patterns as the Grand Line. They don't have like the summer, spring, fall, winter islands or anything like that, right? It's just like normal climates. You know, the further north you get, the more cold it gets. The closer to the equator it gets, the more, you know, warm it gets. But there's still very, very cold places in the east, so I guess there could be very cold places in the west the same way. But the place that Don Chinjiao went really did seem to be like an Arctic cavern. It might have been a cave that was like super. I guess it couldn't have been a cave because I think we did see the sky. But yeah, we don't know where that is. That's the point of this seminar. It might have been the same place. The ice continent might be so damn huge that, you know, there's a section over here where ores landed, but then all the way on the, because even Antarctica in our world, I mean, Antarctica is not like the biggest continent or anything, but it's a pretty big landmass. At least I think it's a solid landmass now because it's so frozen over. I think actual Antarctica with like thermal imaging and stuff, it's like just a bunch of islands that are like an archipelago that's like smattered together at the bottom of the planet, and then just the ice freezes it over, right? I think that's what Antarctica is in our world. So even if you want to say the ice continent in One Piece is like roughly the same size as Antarctica in our world, not super big, it's still really big, right? It's pretty huge, right? There could be penguins down there. Penguins. Now this is anime, so we might have monster penguins that live in Antarctica. I want to find out about this place, Oda, right? And you know, it probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, the ice continent would probably be the coldest place in the entire One Piece world. Like, colder than all the winter islands in the Grand Line, like colder than Drum Island or Karakuri Island or the half of Punk Hazard, like coldest place in the entire One Piece world. Positively frigid. Only maybe surpassed, hold on. Okay. Remember that time in Thriller Bark when Frankie was doing the Tactics 15 and like, you know, merge with me, Straw Hats, and, you know, Chopper merged, and you also had Usopp, and then Zoro and Sanji teamed up, and that moment where they asked Robin to join in too? That might have been the only other moment in the entirety of One Piece where the frigid chill factor emanating off of Robin's just death stare might have surpassed the ice continent alone. But other than that, for most of the time of the year, yeah, the ice continent is the coldest. Yeah, I would actually kind of find it really rather disappointing if the ice continent was just like in the New World. Like if it was just like a really big island that just happened to be frozen over. I want it to be like an entire landmass, all right? A place, because the reason I want that is because right now in One Piece, the only big landmass, the only major continent is the Red Line, and that's where Marijois is and everything like that. This big, huge strip of land that circles the entire planet, right? There's other islands that get really, really big, like the Sandy Island where Alabasta was. That's a pretty sizable island. It's a huge desert and everything like that. But I would like there to be like this large Arctic area where nobody can really gain access to easily. Even the Marines that have access to icebreaker ships, they can get in and out of winter islands. Like, that's how they restocked Karakuri Island, you know, where Frankie got sent. Like, oh, you have to have an icebreaker ship to break through the ice and get to the port. But that would be a completely different story to a continent made of ice that nobody lives on, a deserted ice continent. Because if the Marines can't get there, if the world government can't get there, if pirates cannot get there easily, then it's kind of like frozen in time. And that means a lot of the secrets of the world, like the Void Century, or even before the Void Century, might be preserved in that ice. Take, for example, Antarctica, that the way it was in our world, back when the continents were all merged together into Pangea. Antarctica was a lot further north, and then when the continents began to separate, Antarctica slowly began to move to the bottom. Might have been something like that in the One Piece world, where at one point, every single island in the One Piece world might have been One Piece. Might have been a supercontinent, all merged together into one, and then something happened, and then it began to break apart. Could have been natural means like happened in our world, or it could be something the freaking world government did. There was a giant landmass in the middle of the planet, and then like just a super ocean surrounding it, and then the world government got their hands on some kind of world-destroying super weapon, an ancient weapon, and then boom, and then just like detonated it, and all the continent just broke apart, and then like all the islands happened, and that's how that happens now, right? Some of them ended up in the Four Blues, some of them ended up in the Grand Line, and then maybe the Red Line rose. I'm not really sure how this would have worked, but maybe it was something similar, and then this one chunk of land just kind of like, you know, maybe there was a civilization on there, and then when it got down to the south, it just froze over. you know, so there might be the remnants of an ancient civilization. There could be a poneglyph down there. You know, like I talked about ancient species like dragons and ancient giants, and maybe king species, remnants of king species like the lizard race, or maybe the fallen angel race. I don't freaking know, the hellspawn race, whatever. They're frozen down there too. And Whitey Bay is going down there, and she's like constantly exploring things, and we haven't really heard anything from her in forever. I think it was shown in the anime only that Weevil actually fought against her crew, but I don't think that was confirmed in the manga. I think that was just an anime only thing. You know, so I hope she's still okay, because she's Bay. But yeah, so if she's down there, like, doing these expeditions into the Arctic and everything and discovering new stuff, that would actually be really cool to bring it back later. You know, the Straw Hats don't actually necessarily have to go there, but we could find out something later. Like, you know, oh, we made a discovery in the ice continent. Turns out dragons were real. We discovered and it's like they did bring it to freaking Marijua, this giant block of ice, and there's a dragon inside of it. Like, whoa! This was found in the ice continent by an expeditionary party. Whoa, that's crazy. You know, so, and then maybe Vegapunk could use it. Actually, you know what? Maybe that already happened. Maybe the whole reason Vegapunk was like cloning dragons is because he got a sample of it. Maybe they found a piece of like dead dragon flesh in the Arctic, sent it to Vegapunk, and Vegapunk experimented with it, and that's how we got the dragons at Punk Hazard. Maybe he didn't just make them up out of nothing or just screwing around with frog or lizard DNA. Maybe he actually had a fragment of actual dragon flesh and was working with that. Then again, I guess in that situation, it doesn't necessarily have to come from the ice continent, because as we saw at Marijua, they had the basement dungeon where Eam was looking at the giant straw hat, and that was also like a giant freezer. It was really cold down there. So maybe, you know, if the celestial dragons, if the Tenryubito actually did control real dragons at one point, they probably have like the bones or like maybe a frozen piece of dragon flesh, and maybe that's what they gave to Vegapunk, right? But yeah, I mean, like, not a particularly long video or anything like that, but I'm rather interested in the ice continent. I'm just like interested in the vague places in One Piece that are mentioned like once or twice. Like, for one thing, I'm like, is that foreshadowing, Oda? Are you foreshadowing an ice continent arc? Are you? Probably not. Or is it just going to be one of those things that gets mentioned and then the story of One Piece ends and nobody ever addresses it again? Probably the latter, but who knows? It's my job to talk about everything related to One Piece. Next chapter is gonna be, next video is gonna be about Frankie's hair and Frankie's hair alone, but everything about One Piece. It's my solemn duty, Barry. Okay, so anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about the ice continent below, all that good stuff, and if giant dragons are frozen there, and what the deal with ores was, and if, you know, it's ever going to play an importance to the story. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101, signing out.